Y'all think you know country music? You might not know the full story on this. Part 98. Back in 1978, Willie Nelson fired his manager, Neil Reshin. Now, this was the same guy that helped negotiate Willie out of his RCA record deal. He also helped him to sign with Atlantic Records, marking Atlantic Records' very first country act to be on the label. But why did he fire such a successful manager, you might be asking? Well, because a few months before this, Willie found out Neil had been mishandling his money and filing tax extensions with the IRS. And, of course, not been paying Willie's taxes. But when Willie found this out, he fired him. In 1979, Willie hired this accounting firm named Price Waterhouse to handle all his money and to take care of his taxes. But there was a problem with that, because little did Willie know at the time, they were being investigated. Well, they suggested that Willie put his money in a tax shelter in San Francisco called First Western Government Securities, which turned out to be illegal. So a few years later, in 1984, the IRS became suspicious of Willie's tax obligation when they saw the substantial amount of deductions going into this First Western. So they disallowed his deductions, and they concluded that Willie Nelson would owe them $6 million in taxes and another $10 million on top of that for interest and penalties for the previous 6 years. But Willie just didn't have the money to pay it at the time. This rocked on all the way up to 1990, when even more interest and penalties had accrued, making Willie's total $16.7 million that he owed to the IRS. Willie and his attorney, Jay Goldberg, was able to negotiate with the IRS down to $6 million. But Willie still didn't have the money to pay him. As his daughter Lana Nelson said at the time, he probably didn't even have $30,000, much less $1 million. So finally, on November 9th, 1990, the IRS seized everything Willie Nelson owned, with plans to auction it off to the highest bidder. Everything except one thing, because Willie asked his daughter Lana to mail him his longtime trusty companion Martin guitar, Trigger, to Hawaii, where they couldn't get it. So she did. Thank you, Lana, for that. Now, I ain't real sure if the IRS just didn't realize how big Willie Nelson was, especially in Texas, but they damn sure found out. Because in January of 1991, when they held the auction for his 44-acre ranch outside of Austin, guess what? Nobody showed up. I mean, not one person. 2 more days go by. Finally, on that third day, his Austin ranch sells $203,840 to a group of farmers that Willie had been helping through his Farm Aid program over the years. So they immediately turned around and sold it back to Willie. Yeah, goodbye. Quite a bit of things from his recording studio, about $68,000 worth of stuff. But a lot of these people was friends of his, or just really, really big fans that eventually get back to him. So finally, when the IRS sees what they're up against, they decide to take some of that personal memorabilia that they seized, like gold records and stuff like that, and sell it to the Willie Nelson and Friends Showcase for $7,000. Mind you, in the meantime, Willie and Jay Goldberg, his lawyer, had filed a lawsuit for $45 million against Price Waterhouse, which was eventually settled for an undisclosed amount, but I'm sure it was pretty damn good. Well, that's when Willie does yet another thing that nobody's ever done. He comes up with this idea and strikes a deal with the IRS to sell an album of just him and his guitar based on a strictly revenue-sharing payment method way, whatever. Basically, Willie would hire a telemarketing company, do a TV spot, and fans would call a 1-800 number and buy this album for $19.95 plus shipping and handling. And of these profits, $9.95 would go to the telemarketing company, $1.60 would go toward the cost of the album, $2.49 would go to Sony Records, $3 would go to Willie, $3 would go to the IRS, $1 would pay for his lawsuit against Price Waterhouse, and $2 would pay for the tax generated from the sales of this album. The IRS miraculously agreed, and this became one of the biggest marketing campaigns of the 90s.
And he's helped thousands of people across this land. Now, Willie needs your help, and he's reaching out the best way he can through his music. With your purchase of Willie's IRS tapes, you not only get the satisfaction of helping one of America's greatest treasures, you also receive 25 unique songs recorded by Willie through the years.
Just unbelievable. This record is a 2-disc album called The IRS Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories. Now, the record needed to sell at least 4 million copies to pay the debt, which didn't happen. Well, finally, the record was made available in stores in 1993, and this increased the album sales quite a bit. So in total sales of that record, Billy was able to pay back $3.6 million to the IRS, and he paid the remainder himself. In fact, he paid him about $9 million. Now, this is just an unbelievable story. People don't realize how huge that was. Who in the world can come up with a deal like that and get the freaking IRS to even agree to it, even after you come up with it? Willie Nelson, that's who. Yeah. Now, nowadays, and it's often made a joke of or something funny related to it, I just wanted to tell y'all the true seriousness that this was. This was a huge deal. Willie Nelson actually beat the IRS. He still had to pay him. Oh, yeah, he did that. He fulfilled his obligation. I think in the process, he got the upper hand because they wasn't expecting Texas to show up the way they did. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million more. God bless Willie Nelson, one of the best songwriters and artists of our time. I appreciate y'all as always. Y'all are helping me out with Christmas presents this year. That's something unbelievable that I never thought would happen from social media, but it's because of y'all. I truly appreciate it. Try to do as many of these as I can. Thank y'all so much. My family thanks you too. So share with your friends. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one.